Welcome everyone to Webinar Wednesday, our first live video event. We welcome all of you from Trinidad, Tobago, the wider Caribbean and beyond. Thank you for joining us today. So I am your host, Ferreira Hodges, and your co-host chatting with you in the chat box is Estrella Hernandez. Lockjack GSV Webinar Wednesdays is brought to you by Lockjack GSV Consulting Services. So we're going to get straight into it today, and I am very pleased to welcome someone who I know quite well, Mr. Lorenzo Hodges. He has over 18 years experience delivering solutions across various industries. He's an entrepreneur who founded Plain White Table Inc., an innovation strategy firm, and Circulate Life, a non-profit organization. He lectures here at Lockjack GSV in areas such as electronic and mobile commerce, digital and social marketing, and product development and innovation. He's an expert in corporate and digital innovation, experience design, as well as new product and service design. He holds his master's from Lockjack GSV in international business development and innovation. He is currently the CEO of Ferreira Optical Limited. Lorenzo, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Taryn. Glad to be here with you. It's been a long time since I've seen you, hasn't it?
Yeah, just like a few minutes, hour ago or so.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about building a digital organization today. 10 things our audience needs to know, or persons need to know who are running businesses. And so we're going to get straight into it. And I'm going to ask you, kicking off, what is a digital organization? And as you answer that, tell me, what are some of those misconceptions when we think about what is a digital organization?
Okay, so let me start with some of the misconceptions first. I think the number one misconception when people think about a digital organization really is that it is all about technology. That technology is the primary driver. And so when you talk about digital, it means that technology is the main thing that you have to change. And that'd be a wrong perception of things and a wrong approach to things as well. This second misconception, I think, is that when you talk about digital, people assume digital means digital marketing. So they often use the terms interchangeably, digital marketing and digital. So even when they discuss the issue of digital strategy, often what they're really referring to is digital marketing strategy, which really is a subset of a digital organization. So what really is a digital organization? A digital organization is one which, from the inside at the core, from the leadership to structure, to the culture, to processes and systems, all the way through to how you serve your customers on one end, which is the forward front-facing end of the company, to the back end, which is the inputs to the company, that end of the supply chain where you access and connect with your suppliers. So all the way through your supply chain where you leverage digital in a very material way. That is a digital organization.
Okay. And what is the relationship? Because, you know, this is our Strategy 2020 series. So we want to get into how organizations can build not just their digital organization, but a digital strategy. What is that relationship between digital strategy and your business strategy?
Yeah. So your business strategy really always drives everything. Thing is that today we have different kinds of businesses. And so we have to be mindful that there are some businesses that are in fact born digital, meaning that from inception, they started off having a value proposition that is digital. So if you think about a company like Amazon.com, Amazon was birthed as a digital company from day one. They started off online, and so inherent in their business model was the requirement to think digital and live digital in the way in which they serve their customers. And so for a business like that, the business strategy is largely made up of significant things that are digital. Of course, it is not completely digital because there are some things in your strategy that are not digital. Overall, your business strategy should be the leading imperative for where your digital strategy fits. So therefore, when you define the overall direction for the company, where you're going, what your objectives are, what you're trying to achieve, your digital strategy becomes a key pillar inside of that.
Okay. So what is key? So I want to become a more digital organization. What is key for igniting my organization's digital strategy? What are some of those considerations?
Okay, I think first of all, at the strategy level, so let's think about 5 components of a digital organization, or what would make an organization digital. And in fact, there are digital maturity models that would allow you to assess where are we on the spectrum of things. Okay? And so the first really has to do with strategy. And by strategy now, I'm dealing with the strategic plan and implementation, but also those who drive strategy, which is at the leadership level of the organization. If your leaders don't think digital in a certain way, if it's not priority in their mind, if they haven't wrapped all of their considerations around what does it take to be a digital company and how do we first drive it? Because in reality, no company becomes digital if their leadership don't think digital. Leaders have to think digital. It has to be part of the mindset where you prioritize digital and you understand how to infuse digital as part of the business of today, the way in which you operate. So that's first thing would be leadership and strategy. The second thing would then be your wider organization culture, because that mindset that lives in the minds of the leaders has to be something that now pervades the atmosphere of the organization. And so your conversation, the way in which you collaborate, the way in which you connect in your everyday life, the way in which relationships are built, all of that makes a part of the culture. The way in which you incentivize different kinds of behaviors, those things have to center around being able to use digital in a meaningful way and as a seamless part of, well, this is life for us. So I remember there's one company that I went to, and in their case, they were talking about digital really focused on launching a website. Okay. And so for them, this was their notion of we are becoming digital. We're going to interface with our customers. And there is a part of the digital organization that, of course, effectively interfaces with customers through digital channels. But in this case, all of their internal operations, the way in which they behaved and conducted life and business as normal, really was manual. Okay, which really does not speak to a digital mindset, and culturally they were not digital. So we started with leadership and strategy, talking about the issue of the culture and your culture and your organization. Then, of course, your operations. How do you build out your operations, all of the systems in your organization to be able to use digital in a specific way? Then the technology component comes in. How do we now use the bits and bytes and infrastructure and computers and devices and networks and bandwidth and all of the technical things to boost and energize the business so that you could achieve outcomes in a faster way and in a more accelerated manner. But the fifth then becomes the issue of your customers. That you're moving from simply offering an interface, a digital interface like a website or social media to connect with your customers, now becoming a digital partner to your customers. And when you become a digital partner to your customers, if you think about a partnership describes a very intimate connection, the way in which two people could relate and have a productive synergistic relationship just by the means of our joining. So if your customers could feel a sense of value in how they relate to you, that there is an emotional connection that may come through digital channels, but part of it is that they feel that you are near, whether it is through a mobile app or social media. The issue is not the technology. The issue is how do you become part of their lives. Of course, that changes depending on the industry that you're in. But in many cases, that notion of you becoming a digital partner really is key. So you have leadership and strategy, you have the culture and the organization, you have the operations, you have the technology component, and then you have that issue of becoming a digital partner to your customer. Those things, if you move those things along, you begin to shape a real digital company. And of course, across all of those 5, you have the ability to start at a low level and then over time add complexity and sophistication in the way in which you engage across those 5 aspects.
I'm sitting here and I'm hearing what you're saying over the 4 things that we were just discussing about digital organizations, and I'm sure as well for the audience as they're processing. I'm thinking, okay, so what does that look like? If I am in insurance, I'm in banking, I'm in distribution, give us an example in terms of going through that stage where how would the leadership start thinking differently? What would they now be considering? Then, okay, how does that trickle down in terms of changing our process, or what kind of technology, just to give us a sense of what does that look like in reality?
So are you looking at the outcomes of it, or are you looking at the process towards it? Which one, where are you leaning?
I think I'm leaning to process, but this is probably why I need the example. So in terms of how it comes about, because I'm sitting here and I'm trying to think, okay, so I need to start by, as a leader, thinking differently if it is I'm leading my organization to become more digital. So even wrapping my head around what is this digital organization, it's not just about technology, it's not just about me having a website. Where do I start thinking? What does it look like? What would be for some of my first thoughts then? I mean, how do I link it from the customer to the process I want an example.
Okay, so I'll give you an example of a company that I think is a significant player in the region where it comes to really being digital and growing pretty quickly in becoming a real digital organization. And that would be NCB Jamaica. So it's a wonderful bank. I'm not a customer of them. They are not, in my previous context, they were not a customer of mine. I first really encountered them back in 2016 when they ran their first digital innovation challenge. And they opened up this invitation to innovators across the Caribbean to come to pitch ideas to improve banking of today and to modernize banking. And so they invited those teams, the shortlisted teams, and those teams got to present and so on. Fortunately, my team actually won. At the time, I was at Telus Systems Limited. And so it was a team of 3 of us that represented Telus. And we developed a service called Concierge. And in doing that, we got to see some of the behind the scenes of the bank. Because it's one thing to say out in public, yeah, we're having a digital innovation challenge. Our question was, well, what is it like behind the scenes? And so behind the scenes, they have a really comprehensive program for the entire company, because digital is written into their strategy as one, at least at the time. I believe so far from a conversation I had with them last year, it has gone even further beyond, because they are driving innovation as a whole. And a key part of their innovation program is in fact using digital in a meaningful way. So it is encoded into their strategy. So in their case, the leaders first saw the thing. And because the leaders first saw the thing, they built it into their strategy. And if you think about how strategy must cascade down throughout an organization, which is at the top, a decision is made that we are heading in a particular direction, and there are certain things that we have to hit, after which you formulate some objectives. Those objectives will be distributed across the organization, HR, finance, accounting, marketing, all of the different business functions and business units would have their own appropriate objectives that they have to hit. And those objectives then go all the way down to individuals and the way in which they work. That's strategy and strategy formulation. And so digital for them became something that went all the way down to, not just at the high level, but all the way down to staff. So they have training programs to build their staff. They have agile rooms and agile centers. And agile it's not a new thing, but there's a resurgence of the word agile now. In the earlier days, agile as a term was used a lot for software developers and in the tech industry. Now, many traditional companies are using the term agile as a way of life and a way of operating and so on. It simply means being able to be very lean in your operations and to convert ideas pretty quickly into proven, tested, and implemented solutions. That's being agile. And so in their case, the notion of, hey, why don't we use digital this way? gets realistically built out because they have teams who would go quickly into prototyping things and then building out new ways in which to use digital. So that's from the top where you an agenda, strategic agenda is set, and that thing then goes all the way down to individuals now feeling empowered and knowing that in this culture, it's okay to use digital. In my work, I could use digital, and of course, they then had to also build out more systems on one end again for connecting in their customers, but even the way in which they work, the way in which they collaborate. The thing is deep and well embedded throughout the organization. I don't know if that example helps you, but in their case, they're seeing significant benefits and outcomes that are meaningful to the business because they've gone that route. And it's a company that I have my eye on, and I'm really glad that we have an example like that within the Caribbean. Of course, there are others, but they are stand out to me because of how very focused and aggressive they are in pursuing that agenda.
So in just even you sharing that example, I'm seeing that there could be a lot of change in your organization as in terms of when you choose to pursue a digital strategy. So how does digital change your business, or how can it change your business?
So digital could really change your business by allowing your business or making your business to be, making your business more relevant to today, okay? The way business operated over a decade ago, there was a certain pace that was associated with it, but the norms have changed and businesses have to move faster. The threat that you face today, if you are a local company operating within the Caribbean, or even operating regionally in the Caribbean, there may have been a time where you could have been insulated from external threats. And the reality is that technology and the democratization of technology, which really means the simplification of technology to allow the common man to do whatever they want. Once upon a time, to build a website, you had to learn software, learn coding, to write complex, usable software applications. You had to be a programmer. Today, you have tools that would allow anyone on your team to, through point and click and tap interfaces, build pretty decent applications. You could build mobile apps and more complex things just like that. And the point I'm getting at is that anyone today could become your competitor. So the digital has lowered the barriers to entry. In the past, to get into your sphere, someone had to have, sufficient capital to get in and a long run up to get ready. Whereas now someone in a garage who knows a bit of code, two people, and we've seen the stories because Microsoft's story started with the two guys, Google's story started with the two guys, Mark Zuckerberg's story started with Mark Zuckerberg, right? In a dorm room somewhere, writing something that can impact the world as a whole. And so when you may be thinking that we are large and our competitors are the guys that look like us, meaning other traditional business that are of your size and scale and in your industry, what you find is digital is opening up new business models that will allow someone to introduce new options to your customers and people who you really did not see coming. And so because the barriers to entry are so low, businesses have to become more adept at satisfying their customers' needs by using digital in a more prevailing way, right? So the barriers to entry are lower on one end. So there's the issue of the threat from competition. Then there's the issue of customer expectation, because customers today expect things to be like Insta moments, meaning like Instagram, where I could do things as long as it takes me to take a selfie, I could complete a transaction, right? And so there's this notion of getting things now and having things done now. So the business that does not cater to an evolving, more sophisticated customer base that has high levels of expectations that they could access stuff at the tap of a screen with a swipe, left or right. If you don't begin to cater to their needs, you will lose out. Okay? And then the last thing I think really just has to do with agility and speed. that being able to use digital in a meaningful way allows you to accelerate the way in which you do business.
Okay. So how would I know if my organization is ready?
That's a tricky question. I think, but a necessary question. I think in every organization and at all levels, but I would emphasize particularly leadership level, review needs to be done. Leaders have to evaluate where are we at today in terms of our industry and the specifics of our business, and evaluate, is our team ready? So if you bring the technology in, and your team actually handle it. So for example, if you think of a modern day retail enterprise that has physical brick and mortar structures, which doesn't really sound like a modern day, but work with me, right? Your standard brick and mortar structure, it's an eye care company like Ferreira's, shameless plug. It's a clothing company like Francis Fashions or one of them, or sporting company. Again, it's retail, brick and mortar, customers come. And you decide, we are going to change the way in which customers interact inside of the store by introducing contactless payments, for example, or introducing smart mirrors to facilitate the way in which customers then go about choosing and trying on. So there are smart changing booths now that you could use. It's not prevalent, but they exist. So you could go into a changing room, and the standard mirror that you would see when you're trying on a blazer or a top or crop top or a peplum blouse or something, that whatever you're trying on in front of the mirror, in the past you would be looking at, it's just you and the room, in the privacy of the room, trying things on, and you have a human assistant that may bring clothes to you. In technology now allows someone to be going through different selections by touching the screen and interfacing with the mirror. Okay, and it then changes the dynamics of what is expected of the staff. And the question then is our staff ready to be able to interface with customers? Are they relevant? Are they current enough? Are they comfortable enough to be able to interface with customers where technology is taking part of the burden away from them and part of the responsibility away from them, but also then changing the nature of the responsibility that your staff has. Okay, so that issue of from are we ready at the leadership team, and then is our staff ready, is something that has to be answered and evaluated to see if we are to plot a way forward, what are the priority things that we need to do. And I think there is no bad place that a company could be. The issue is, how far along are you, and how far along do you intend to get? And then at what pace do you intend to move there? But what you cannot afford to ask, I think, in most industries, because I won't say all, because I simply can't think of an industry that doesn't need to change quickly, but there probably are a couple that may have another decade or so before they really need to do something significant in becoming digital. But I think the issue is everyone has to assess, where are you? Be comfortable where you are, but also be uncomfortable staying where you are.
Right. Having said that, it raises the question, and I think we would like to know from you, our audience, by just inviting you to answer this poll in terms of, does your organization have a clear digital strategy? Would you say so? Would you say your organization has a clear digital strategy? We've heard what the digital organization is like. We have heard how vital it is in terms of moving forward. So we would like to hear from our audience. So the poll is up, and we're already getting responses from what I can see. So some persons saying somewhat agree. Right now it's still showing as the highest. We're just going to leave it open for a little longer, just to give everyone an opportunity to respond. Okay, so we can close that poll now and polling. And yeah, we're seeing that my organization has a clear digital strategy And the bulk of persons, we have 41% of our respondents saying somewhat agree. And then we have a 32% saying disagree. Wow. Yeah, that is significant. Those are significant numbers, I would say.
May I see that again? Sorry. Can we get it back?
I don't know. I can't get it back.
Okay. That's all right.
That's
all
right.
right.
But it was 41% saying somewhat agree, 32% saying disagree. 6%, I'm being prompted by Estrella here, I'm working hard in the background. 6% saying strongly agree.
6% strongly agree.
Strongly agree. And 6% also strongly disagree. But only 6% of the persons out there, oh, it's right there. 6%
yes,
out there is saying, yes, my organization has a clear digital strategy. And what is that percentage for agree?
The percentage for agree is 15%.
15% is saying agree. My company has a clear digital strategy.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm not completely surprised. Part of it, of course, has to do with everyone's sense of where their company is at. It's even more interesting to me that the largest percentage, at least cumulative, seems to be in a lesser state of readiness or movement or maturity. I think the word I would use is maturity in terms of digital maturity. So the level of agreement may be indicative of where our organizations are. I'd be really intrigued to see how those numbers go across industry and also the levels people are at. So depending on what level you may be at in your organization, your perception and sight of how digital you are may change. In some cases, people may not be aware of private projects to move in a particular direction. But I guess the truth is, if the project is not bearing fruit yet, then you're still at that end of we're not yet digital, or we're not yet as digital as we believe we can be. So really interesting data there.
Yeah, very interesting. And it'd be great to get behind those numbers and see as to why. Why do you think your organization is not there yet? So we were talking about how do I know my organization is ready, and we looked at leadership and then also getting the people ready. And we also talk about that misconception that when we talk digital, it's all about the technology. So I'm asking you, who are the key people in a digital organization?
Yeah, people would be always my number one concern when we talk about digital organization. And you rightly said, as I mentioned before, we always make assumptions about IT and technology. So people generally would think, well, your IT manager or your chief information officer would be key. I think at the level of chief information officer, I think it's more key than IT manager. Not that anyone is unimportant, let me be clear. There's no one in an organization that is unimportant. Everyone, if you are to become a digital organization, it is an imperative for everyone. Mm-hmm. The starting place for getting to the place where everyone is digitally capable mm-hmm. and competent and active really is at the leadership level. I think your executive team has to become a digitally enabled executive team. How do we go about making decisions? How do we meet? How do we share information? How do we collaborate? Is digital part of the norms of the interaction at that level? And that's just your everyday work. But everyone at that level has to understand what it means. So let's talk about some of the other key players. Of course, your CEO mm-hmm. absolutely so has to drive it and say, we have to become digital, and the CEO has to have a future focus. Yes, you have to have a part of your mind that's always thinking about how do we continue to row the boat or sail the ship. But part of the CEO's mind has to be thinking about, okay, how do we also build a new ship, right? How do we get ready for the future? So the CEO, absolutely. The CIO has to be thinking about how do we use technology in a meaningful way. I think HR is often not looked at where people think about becoming a digital organization. And the thing is, HR often are the ones that orient you into the company. So even before you come in, how does HR connect to attract resources? And then how do you begin to describe in job descriptions to attract the right talent? HR has an active role to play there. It can't be a role that is all about, well, just someone else tell me what you need and I'll craft a well-scripted job description for you. HR has to understand not just from a JD standpoint, a job description standpoint, but how do we enable our people in real ways? How do we drive employee engagement using digital, and not have paper as the norm, right? So there's the talent side, there are the system side for HR. Okay, again, sorry, I'm sticking to the people, but I'm just like, those are a couple of things just as a starter. HR would be key in there, absolutely marketing. And the point I'm actually getting to making is that your entire leadership team is key. All of the roles and the key players at your leadership team have to be people who carry digital on their heart and minds in a real way, and then make steps to the extent that they have to shift to adopt it in their own use or transform their personal view of digital. There can be no one that says, well, that is for them young people. Translation, that's for the younger folk, right? Right? There's no one has the option to say that, and to make the determination that, well, I am too senior or too old or old school to make this shift. Digital is too new for me. I think everyone has to be able to embrace it as a part of life. If it is embraced, it then changes all of your outcomes. Because the decisions that you make will then, of course, impact everything that you do.
I think it's important as well, in terms of hearing what you're saying, that if it is a challenge for you, if it is an area that requires development where you're uncomfortable, that you need to own that and recognize that. Otherwise, you will not be moving ahead, and so you need to own that, recognize that, and start making a change. Because if you just leave it in denial, you are not only, you're impacting not just, well, yourself, your team, but the organization, especially if you're in a position of leadership.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the common challenges in building a digital organization?
I think the first one really has to do with that leadership mindset I said before. And everywhere I go, I talk about the issue of leadership mindset. My real focus in general is not digital. Though I do practice digital and encourage digital, my real focus is always about innovation. And innovation really is about becoming something new or offering something, delivering new value with impact in mind. Okay, so that's my little summary of what innovation is. And so I see digital as one of those realms within which we can innovate, either using digital to propel our innovation or innovating in the space of digital, right? Either way. And so key in there really is that leadership mindset. I think that is an absolute starting place, that the way you think, it must not only be that you've operationalized your digital organization, that you've become paperless. Okay, great. So you've become paperless and you have automated a set of internal processes. That's good. That means you're stepping higher up. You've digitized, but you're not yet fully a digital organization because you've really automated a set of internal processes and so on, and in some cases, some external facing things. But the mindset is what helps to reinforce the right behavior. Okay? The way in which you think about things, the way in which you evaluate things. That would be the starting place for leaders. What was I want to make sure I got the scope of your question.
Common challenges in building the digital.
Right. So yeah. So and many get stuck there. Right. Many get stuck there in not being able to shift their mindset because we have done business this way, and you hear people saying, "We've always done it this way." And there's this notion that because we've always done it this way, and it has worked for us up until now, we could safely assume that it will always work for us going forward. Many have gone that way and have died.
Yes.
Right? And I'm not going to get into the examples of companies that have walked in that level of hubris and not been able to change when change was required. The thing with organizational change is that there is no organizational change without human change, which means there's no human change without personal change. It has to always come back to what am I or who am I required to become? And based on who I'm required to become, then what am I required to do? In some cases, what am I required to do in order to become who I am to become? And that notion of the mindset that is open to and deliberate about becoming digital is a shift that many find it really, really difficult to make for all kinds of reasons. And really, it comes down to the psychology of human change, right? Can I shift from my comfort zone? Can I become something new? Can I don't want to say reinvent myself, because I'm not dealing with you. I'm not speaking from the perspective of just self-improvement. I'm speaking from the perspective of how do I become relevant to a future that is in fact coming, and a future that is unknown. And because I appreciate the risks inherent and the unknown components in the future, I understand that I have to begin to pivot so that I will be relevant at the time when future shifts come. Okay. Right now, if we think beyond our organizations, we saw what's happening with the oil price just this week, a significant drop because of OPEC and OPEC Plus and things that are outside of most companies' control. Okay, so there are external forces, and I'm just naming that as one. The coronavirus, which is COVID-19, which is an issue today that's affecting supply chains across the globe.
Yes.
And so affecting the movement of labor from place to place and the shift of supply and all of the inputs that companies need. There are price changes, there are all kinds of stuff, massive economic impact because of lower levels of productivity in some cases. People have to cancel things, right? And so those are external things that all impact upon your business. I dare say, God alone knows what else is coming down the track, right? I think it's beyond human comprehension. But if we understand that there are things that we don't know, we have to become oriented to discovering what we don't know, and quickly finding out what do we not know that we don't know. That has to become part of the personal change and being comfortable not knowing, but also being comfortable putting things in place to acquire more and more knowledge over time. It may seem like this has nothing to do with digital, but it has everything to do with digital, because becoming a digital organization really requires a personal shift, which extends towards being a corporate shift.
So I just have, we said 10 things. We've covered 7 thus far. We just have 3 more, but I think you've even answered these in some of your responses. But one of them is, what are some of the leadership implications? So probably if you could tell me those top 3 leadership implications, because I think you have touched on it extensively.
Any leaders listening in might be switching out on me now because of, so top 3 leadership implications. Learn. It's important that leaders expose themselves and read more. And equip themselves. It does not mean that leaders have to become software developers or expert at artificial intelligence or any of the technology things. But certainly understand how do you begin to build your strategy. And I think as a second thing, after learning and becoming more aware, which is the more you know is the better you can act, because knowledge impacts action and it informs action. Okay, so is that learning component. The next, I think, is look again at your strategy formulation process, not just your strategy, because your strategy is an outcome from your strategy formulation process. And so leaders have to find ways in which to get the intelligence into the way in which they go about formulating their strategy so that it becomes part of that conversation. That there's a question of, are we digital enough? How are we maturing on the digital spectrum? Across, again, I gave five parameters, but there are others and there are different models. The one I referenced was mainly from Deloitte, their digital maturity model, but there are others. So feel free to look up the Deloitte's digital maturity model. They have a nice document that's downloadable online that may help for our audience. So learning. Second one is strategy formulation. The third one, I think, really is, I think, beginning to take steps as it pertains to culture. And the thing with culture is about behaviors and norms. And so coming out of your strategy, you have to think about how do we now incentivize the behaviors that are associated with digital, right? And I think those are three things that leaders could begin to shift in a real way, even today, because it starts with, again, all of those things I think are very attainable.
Okay. You gave us, so my next question is, give us an example of digital organization. You already mentioned NCBG. Amazon, you mentioned as well.
Yes.
Give us two more names, because as the person out there, as a leader, as a person that is interested in building digital organizations, I'm looking to see what are the patterns or models out there who may be doing this well. Give us two names.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some small names. When I say small names, sorry.
There's two men in the garage.
Well, they're not two men in the garage, but you know, not much more than two men. In some cases, two women. Two companies come to mind that I think are building digital from the ground up. Actually, I'm going to throw in three. One of them I have great respect for, and that's the Market Movers. Mm-hmm. Market Movers, I think it's like 10 or 11 or 12 years old. Mm-hmm. Market Movers is an online grocery. Mm-hmm. And the team at Market Movers, David and Rachel, had this vision at a time when online groceries was not common. Today, Massy stores, is it Massy stores? Mm-hmm. Right, so I used to always have to update from saying Hilo, right? So Massy stores now has a, you can buy grocery goods off of Massy stores online, as an example. But Market Movers, for more than a decade, has been doing this online, where you want to get your fresh groceries and fruits and stuff like that, you can go online on their website and order, and they'll deliver it to you. Mm-hmm. They are an example of a born digital organization. They still have farmers that are growing the goods and everything, but they are primarily a digital organization. That's how they interface with their customers. And they use SMS and mobile to connect with their farmers. They're small, but to me, just as good as an example as Amazon. Chef Made is a new one. I'm yet to check them out. Shout out to
Estrella is shaking her head. Yes, right. She's endorsing that.
shout out to Kyle Maloney and the crew. Chef Made.
And these are two local companies, Market Movers and Chef Made.
Yes, these are local companies. Chef Made.
When we say local, because we have persons who are logged in from across the Caribbean. We mean
Trinidad and Tobago. In the Trinidad and Tobago context, but all of them are online. So if you go to marketmovers.com, you'll get Market Movers website, chefmade.me. Mm-hmm. And I think I heard Kyle in a podcast talking about this, like, my chef made me pasta. Chef made me. Anyhow, so this is not a plug for any of these companies, but they're good. They're good. I like them. Chef Made is, you want to get meals prepared for you instead of having to buy meals on a daily basis. You could order, I think, twice a week. You go online, the menu is there. You choose what you want. They deliver the food packaged. So literally, from your desk or wherever you are, from your phone, you could order your meals and have it delivered to you, right? And everything complete comes in a package. You pop it in, I think, in the microwave and heat it up and ready to eat. That's a good example. They are a young startup. I think they're doing very well so far. I think some of our ride sharing services, and we have quite a number of them. Those guys at the exit of Uber from Trinidad, those guys fill that gap in a very, very quickly with very competent services, very capable services. These guys are thinking about the logistics. If you think about it, it's not, there's a side of you, the person looking for a ride, saying what time you want to ride and having a car pick you up. But behind the scenes, a lot of digital things and managing the logistics of getting the car to you and so on. And so these businesses are very, very much digital, again, from the ground up. And they can't do it any other way. Yes, you have humans involved and so on, but the way in which they use the technology to become if you think about being a digital partner, right? So TT Rideshare, I think Zip Ride, I don't remember the full name, Drop, these ride sharing companies are all good examples of digital companies that are doing it very, very well.
Thank you so much. And last question, and I can, it's meant to ask you, but I'm thinking my audience will probably have a response. We don't have a poll for it, but they can feel free. We invite them to drop their response in the chat box to this particular question. And we're going into our Q&A shortly. We are over time, but we still would like to get 1 or 2 questions from the audience. We have, we already have 14 questions. And it's 1:21, so we're going to see how many questions we can take.
Would I be bad to say, do you want to switch to them asking their questions?
So is becoming digital critical to business survival was number 10. Is becoming digital critical to business survival? And as I said, the audience could feel free to start dropping their response to that question in the chat box, because I believe after this whole conversation, they have a clear perspective on that. Lorenzo, very briefly.
I absolutely think so. Okay. I think it's critical. I think in 5 to 10 years, those who ignore the call and the opportunity today to shift to becoming digital will find themselves asking questions that they don't have the answers to, because they'll be asking it at a time where the world has changed much faster than they think it would have, and their potential will be disappointed. So I would say absolutely yes. Okay,
I'm going to jump straight into some of those questions.
Yes, get those questions going. What are they? We have them queued up there.
I might need to ask. Q&A, right. So in your experience, share an example of a goal or 2 you should have as part of your strategic priorities or measures.
A goal or 2, I'm trying to interpret, are they saying a goal that is in formulating a strategic plan? Are they saying like a specific line item goal?
I think it's a goal in terms of, because we're talking strategies, I think it's a, what would be one of your strategic goals or objectives? This is how I'm interpreting it, okay, in terms of, building you. So you could give one, because we're short on time. So just
I think one of those goals is drive rich customer experiencing, leveraging digital. Okay. And that, of course, you could build out in other ways by talking about what channels you would use, how you would map your customer journey. So inside of your activities, you may be mapping your customer journey and identifying where along the customer journey you can leverage digital in a meaningful way. And also in the back end of that, so there's a customer facing side, and the back end of that, in order to generate a richer customer experience, there are behind the scenes back office things that you need to automate as well. Otherwise, if a customer is online 24 hours ordering stuff from your store, you need to have a way on the inside to be able to respond to them quickly, in which case you then have to use digital even for that to accelerate the way in which you do. So I think that issue of customer experience is a good example as an area that you could define for improving digital.
And there's a question here, and I think it's important because other persons are probably considering this. Apart from digitization, sorry, questions are coming in and I'm losing my place. Apart from digitization, what other elements contribute to making an organization a digital organization? I think it's important to understand because some people believe I've digitized everything. Am I not a digital organization? So what are some of those other things that they need to consider or makes them?
I'm trying to think beyond what I shared before. Okay, so.
Or even if you need to repeat because they may have missed it based on when they logged in.
True. I think you apart from digitization, so the five areas we spoke about would be, of course, the leadership and strategy, which I bundled together. In Deloitte's pure model, they talk about strategy alone, but to me, when I think strategy, you can't take leadership out of it. So there's the leadership and strategy. There is the issue of your culture and your organization. It's the issue of your operations, your let me count again. So it's leadership and strategy, culture and organization, operations.
You said
technology, and then your customers. How do you become a digital partner toward your customers? So in some of those things, you realize strategy is not a digitization issue, right? Digitization falls under the technology pillar, where you could automate things and use the technology to advance the way in which you work, but you then need to look at your organization systems and your processes as well.
And just to reiterate something you said earlier, because I think in terms of asking this question, they're also looking at, well, it's not a checklist. It's not I can say, okay, well, I digitize everything on social media. I have a website. I'm now a digital. Yeah. It's
right?
not that.
Yeah, correct. And that's part of why I like maturity models, because the issue is you may be across the 5 things I mentioned. You may be doing things across all 5, but there may be more. So the issue would be, can we become even more emphatically so a digital organization? Can we grow in our digital maturity? That's the next question.
So there are several questions here. So is there a methodology, a formal tool, for measuring digitization readiness in an organization? If yes, what is it?
So there are several. Microsoft has one. If you Google or Bing, depending on which search engine you're into, whatever tickles your fancy, if you do a search online, you can look for digital models. I think a good starting place, and again, there are many of these as well. But I would say check out Deloitte's model. I like how comprehensive and how comprehensive it is and how compact the content is. Go search for digital maturity model from Deloitte. Right?
Okay.
Again, I'm not endorsing Deloitte. They do good work, but check them out.
So there are so many good questions here. There are questions about what type of work environment is needed if you're talking about digital transformation.
What type of work environment? I think ultimately work environments, you want to have an employee experience that is fulfilling in general. And in order to have a fulfilling employee experience, if that is your starting place, where employees feel rewarded, they feel comfortable, they feel happy, they look forward to Mondays, right? And putting on their clothes and getting ready to come down to the office, or connecting if it's remote work, depending on the context. So that's important. So if employee experience is the thing you're going after, then how do we use digital to improve that as a way of life? Do we provide tools that will allow people to chat and meet and connect? Do we have collaboration tools for sharing information? Do we move from everything that is paper-based? Is it a set of physical paper-based forms? Do approvals, when you need to get something signed off on, is that done through a manual means, which means either someone has to walk to your office, and I'm taking it from the issue of the digital to what it's like when it's not. Right? That someone has to walk physically to your office to bring you this document to sign, which is different from something being delivered to your desktop, where you can act on it and track through track transactions or real time or near real time, because you can audit the system and see where things are at. Again, it's a way of life. So is email your idea of doing everything? I was interfacing with an organization recently where everything is done through email. And I mean, everything is done through email. I open my eyes wide, right? Like everything. And what happens is things that should be discussed, fleshed out, done, transactions that need to happen, everything lives in email. Files that need to be shared are shared by email. So it is digital, but it's not, there's room for growth in the maturity model. So you're using electronic, but a lot of things are living there, things that should be in a discussion forum. And then there are some, if you're dealing with file sharing files via email, it means I have one copy and you have one copy. And when I edit my copy, you to get my version, I have to email you my version. That's not a digital organization, at least at a higher maturity level, will allow us to go and access the same file repository, update that file. Everyone gets a notice when that file is changed. You have a version tracking on that file, so we can tell Taryn changed the file last night at 11 p.m. Estrella changed the file this morning at 6 a.m. I know you're all committed and work at all hours, right? Here at Lockjaw, right? So again, it's a way of life. So when it becomes digital, you basically leverage the tools better. But right now, people suffer from what I call death by email, as an example, right? Everything is in an email. And so your email inbox is cluttered. And then you have a lot of unproductive time because things that are priority are mixed with things that are not priority. And email is a linear tool, right? You go from most recent to oldest or old, however you sort it, or oldest to, right? But it's difficult to actually prioritize things. And some things that really need to live elsewhere have to be taken out from there and not die through stuff in your inbox.
Thank you so much. I mean, I know we have a lot more questions, both coming in from the chat box as well as on the Q&A panel. This is just our first, this is only our first discussion on digital strategy and building the digital organization. We will be continuing this discussion and bringing other speakers, persons who work in a wholly digital organization from the region as well internationally. So what we're going to do is we're going to capture these questions and make sure we start answering them in some of the future webinars that are coming up. So stay tuned and stay in contact with us. You should follow us on all our social media sites. We often post when the next webinar is coming up. If you're not on our mailing list, you should click on the link to join our mailing list. So Estrella would be dropping into you all our social media links so that you can stay in contact with us and be aware of when we're having Webinar Wednesday events or any other events around this topic. And then she will also be sharing with you the link to join our Webinar Wednesday mailing list if you're not already on it and are not already receiving email from us directly about Webinar Wednesdays. So we're definitely going to not lose your questions. We are going to take them and make sure that they're incorporated in future discussions on building the digital organization. Lorenzo, thank you so much for your time, your insights, the information that you've provided. I think this was a great start to this particular conversation about building the digital organization and responding to the world that we're in of the fourth industrial revolution that's happening and the new world of work.
Yes. Yeah.
We would like to also share with you coming up our strategy toolbox event, because it's all about strategy 2020, propelling the digital organization. Estrella is going to pull up that slide for you shortly. We are partnering with the Balanced Scorecard organization for this, Balanced Scorecard institution. And we've been promoting our certificate program that is happening in March. On Tuesday, March 24th, however, the same body of professionals are going to be here for you to run our from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the afternoon to have a seminar talking about what is in your strategy toolbox, navigating the 9 steps of success. This is a live event here at Lockjack Global School of Business. However, for our regional participants, we are going to have live streaming for you only. To contact us today, you can write consulting@lockjackgsv.edu.tt. So we'll also put up our contact information and you can find out about that event. You can write us at, or you can call us at 299-0218 extension 233. That's 299-0218 extension 223 to find out about our upcoming seminar. If you found this webinar valuable to you today, then complete our webinar survey. That link is going to be dropped in there for you. It helps us to know what topics are of interest to you, what you find valuable, what we can bring in the future to help you build your organizations. So thank you very much for joining us today, and you may contact us if you want more information about our services. Also, if you fill out if you want assistance in building your digital organization strategy or having a strategic planning session, we created room for that in the feedback, in the webinar evaluation form. So you just click on that SurveyMonkey link and let us know if you would like us to come in and do a strategic session for your company in terms of building your digital organization. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you for your time. And thank you for joining our first live video event. There is more to come. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.